God is good, and with each day that passes, brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. This is the Nathan NAPALM channel, and if you are not already subscribed, please consider doing so, especially if you're interested in Pantheon related content on our march to launch. Today I want to talk about why it's taking so long, kind of explain why it's taking so long for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen to come out. If there was one question that I get asked the most, it is definitely, when is this game coming out? Because we're all getting antsy, we're all getting excited, and we want to play the game. Alright, so I totally understand. I'm not, definitely, I feel the same way. I can't wait to get in the game and play it and start experiencing what I've been waiting on all these years, and so I feel you. But let's talk a little bit about it. So, number one, commonly I hear people say that the game's been in development since 2014. It's kind of not true. The Kickstarter was in 2014, but guys, the Kickstarter didn't work out. That's not really, it's not really when the game began. Plus, the entire team was restructured, and it actually technically began in 2015. And ever since they even began, like, they just threw some assets from Unity together, and with what Brad McQuaid already had in his back pocket, just kind of started basically showing us the game from the very beginning. Like, it was kind of crazy. That's definitely not normal. We would still not even have seen the game in a normal development cycle. So all the people who are complaining about the graphics need to understand, we wouldn't even be looking at the game yet. Okay, we would probably, if this was a normal development cycle for like a big publisher or something like that, we would probably barely even know he was making an MMO. It would be at that point. If you searched for, you know, we wouldn't even know the name, probably. It would just be like, you could Google Brad McQuaid's new MMO, and it would probably say, yes, Brad McQuaid is currently developing a new MMO, more information coming soon. And that's it. That would be it. Maybe a screenshot or two might have leaked, and we'd be like, oh, what is that? I wonder what's he doing? And that would be it. So you got to kind of understand that in most cases, most good publishers, you know, big ones, they usually don't even talk or show you anything until they're about, you know, a few months away from going into beta, you know, and then they might start to show you some things and start to show you maybe some streams of beta and things like that. We have been watching streams the entire process and watching it grow, which is great. That's a good thing. We've been involved and we've watched this baby grow, so it's our baby too. And I think that's going to create a better community doing it that way, because by the time the game comes out, we're going to truly respect it, you know what I mean, as opposed to finding out about it and then, you know, 6 to 8 months to maybe a year at the most the game is out. When you've been watching it for years, it becomes a part of you as well. So, you know, just like the developers, it's their baby. We're gonna honestly feel like it's ours too, because we've been there. You know, maybe we're not putting in the work that Visionary Realms is, for sure, but we're involved in many ways. So I think that's very cool. Now, another thing I want to talk about is I want to point out a few other MMOs that and their development time, just kind of give you an idea. So typically the standard MMO game development's usually between 5 to 9, maybe even 10 years. Elder Scrolls Online, which by the way had a huge team and a ridiculous amount of funding, took 7 years to develop. Okay, now World of Warcraft, that took 5 years in development, and that was the most ridiculous team at Blizzard with the most ridiculous amount of funding you could imagine. So, you know, 5 years. Keep in mind, it hasn't even been that long with Pantheon, and they have a much smaller team and much smaller funding. And then we have, let's talk about one that's not even out yet, a game that I actually am interested in, which is Camelot Unchained, which has actually been in development for 6 years, and it also has a much larger team than Visionary Realms, And so they definitely have, I would assume, more funding than Pantheon as well. They're 6 years deep. Of course, they're making their own engine, and Pantheon is not. And that is one of the reasons, by the way, the Visionary Realms chose Unity. They felt that the development time could be shorter if they used that engine. So that's why they're using Unity. That's another question people ask. Why Unity? Well, they liked it. They saw the possibility. Now, it's a heavily modified version of Unity. Very heavily modified. It's not just like out of the package. I know there's some really crappy games come out of Unity, and let me explain why. It's not that Unity sucks. There's been some great games come out of Unity as well. The reason you see crappy games come out of Unity is because it's so easy to work with that you're going to see some actual brand new or amateur developers able to release a game, and it may suck. You know, it is what it is. If you have something with easy access, you're going to get some crappy games out of it because it's easy. People are learning. They're learning the ropes, and they're releasing things to try to, you know, stage enough money for future development. That's not the case with Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. We have a team of older, more experienced developers, obviously, on that team. So, you know, we're not having to deal with that. Don't worry. But Pantheon, like I said before, it began its Kickstarter in 2014, but that Kickstarter failed and everything was restructured in 2015, and that's when the true development began. So, we're in 2019 at the time of this recording, so we're sitting at the 4-year mark. I looked around, I didn't find a single big budget MMO that has been successful that has been finished in 4 years, so it's absolutely not in any kind of universe bizarre that Pantheon isn't out yet. And a lot of people are acting like, oh my gosh, it's been development for 4 years, where is it? Guys, like, that's not very long. You understand that we're just watching the entire process. An MMORPG, unless it's a giant steaming pile of crap, takes a lot of time. You're building an entire new IP. You're literally having to handcraft all these different assets in the game, trees, and, you know, the dungeons, the world, the placement, the cities, all the skills, all the behavior of the NPCs, the NPCs themselves, all the monsters, all the raid bosses, all the everything. It takes time. So that's why the game's not out yet. And keep in mind, once again, Pantheon is not a big budget MMO. There are pros and there are cons to that. A definite con, as even Visionary Realms has admitted, is that less developers equals it takes more time to complete. Now, as the funding grows, and as it has grown, we've seen the team expand. So the thing about Pantheon, if you pay really close attention, you'll notice that they're not wasting any of the funds. They're making sure before they hire a new person on, they make sure they have enough to hold their wages until their expected launch. And keep in mind, what does that mean? That means that they do have an internal date that they are shooting for. There is a date that they at Visionary Realms are trying to get the game out for, but they will not release that date until they feel very comfortable that they're going to get it done by then. And probably they won't announce that date until they're somewhere in the range of 3 to 6 months from that date, most likely. So we made it this far, guys, and if you follow closely, you can see massive amounts of changes, and every time we come into a new alpha, pre-alpha stage, we can see the game getting closer to launch every time, and with massive improvements. So hang in there, my comrades. Pantheon is coming. It is a smaller team. It is a passion project, but it is coming. And to be honest, we've made it through the hardest part. These first 4 years was the least amount of information, the least amount of progress, because they're literally building the world. And not to say they're not still doing that, but the basis is finishing up right now. The base is finishing up right now. So when we come out into the next pre-alpha, their hell will actually be at a minimum caliber of launch. In other words, the minimum they could get away with to launch the game. And guys, this is Visionary Realms. They're going for perfection here. They realize that they're going to have to compete with AAA developers, and they are not a AAA sized team, so that's very difficult to do. So they're being very careful, they're being very smart, very strategic, so that they can come out on top. Keep in mind, this has been done before. I want to mention something actually. A lot of people have forgotten this, or maybe didn't know to begin with. Dark Age of Camelot, developed by Mythic Entertainment, was a very small development team. Very small, and they were pulling off something crazy for back then. And that was the round versus round PvP, trying to make PvP fun, you know, because it was a little wild before that. It was a little bit like the Wild West in PvP before Dark Age of Camelot, and they pulled it off to massive success, and I really hope that Visionary Realms pulls it off to the same level of success as Dark Age of Camelot, and I think they will, guys. It feels so similar. It feels very different at the same time, but it feels very similar to before Dark Age of Camelot was launched. It was a small team, and it's like, how can they really do this? Can technology really pull off all the things they want to do? You know, and so it feels kind of similar to me, at least. Of course, Dark Age of Camelot, that was a different team, by the way. There's not a single person from that team working on Pantheon. I'm just bringing it up because of the size of the development team. So, you can't blame Visionary Realms for this or hold them accountable for Mythic's actions. However, I do remember there was some very crazy, not true kind of information that came from Mythic back before the game came out. I'm not going to get into much detail, but at least we're honestly not having to deal with that. When Visionary Realms talks, everything they say makes sense. It's not, you know, it is revolutionary, which is sad. It shouldn't be. This is really how MMORPG should be, but it's revolutionary because they've taken such a different path as of late. So, guys, that's pretty much it. I've rambled on long enough. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is coming. For those who think the game's not even coming out, come on. What's wrong with you? Have you seen how much effort has been put into the game? How much progress is made so far? They're literally telling us we have enough funding to make it until launch. All the additional funding is actually just helping us get more developers so we can get the game out quicker. Guys, the game is coming out. Brad McQuaid would not just screw us over like that with this passion project, so that's completely silly. The game is coming out. Too much development time has been put into it at this point, and they're at a good place, and everything's rolling very smoothly. Guys, thank you very much for checking this out. I hope it helped you with your weight, because that's really what I'm all about, helping you get to launch with your brain and your mind still intact without going mentally insane. Thanks for joining me, guys, and until next time, God bless and happy gaming. Please listen to what I say. I've been making videos all day. My friends all say I'm gay. It's a video buffet. You can even hit replay. But please just subscribe. I can't even describe being part of my tribe. I'll even offer you a prize, but just please just subscribe and hit the bell notification too.